A chill wind whispers across desolate ruins, carrying tales not just of time, but of terror. Imagine a thriving metropolis, its streets vibrant with life, its coffers overflowing, its people confident in their legacy. Now, picture that same city silenced, shattered, its inhabitants vanished or slain. And not by mere conquest or some predictable disaster, but by something far more sinister, a curse. You can almost hear the whispers of divine retribution, of vengeful spirits, of pacts broken, and sacred boundaries crossed. This is that eerie place where history meets horror, where archaeology unearths not just artifacts, but our deepest anxieties. Across the shadowed landscapes of our past, certain names resonate with a particular dread. We're talking about cities that didn't just fall, were seemingly obliterated, their very memory stained by whispers of dark magic and inescapable doom. These are the stories that claw at the edges of our rational understanding. Tales of flourishing centers of power and culture brought to catastrophic, often sudden ends. Their destruction blamed on potent, terrifying curses. Today, we journey into this shadowy past. We're going to walk the ghostly outlines of these doomed metropolises, sift through the ashes of their destruction, and listen to the terrifying legends that surround their fall. Our quest is to investigate what's true, to peel back the layers of myth and time and ask, were these cities truly cursed? Or do these enduring legends mask even more unsettling realities about how fragile civilization can be and the darkness that can lurk in human belief? Think about this. What if the most potent force in a city's annihilation wasn't an army, or an earthquake, or even a plague, but a word? A malediction, a curse, spoken with enough venom, believed with enough fervor to call down utter ruin. Thousands of years might pass, empires can turn to dust, but the chilling idea of a cursed city, a place damned and forsaken, simply refuses to fade. Before we venture into the ruins of cities, whispered to be eternally damned, we need to understand what an ancient curse actually was. What were these pronouncements of doom? Were they just superstitious ramblings, or did they tap into something deeper, something that could, in its own way, bring about destruction? The idea of the curse is as old as civilization itself. It's like a dark thread woven into the spiritual fabric of countless cultures. Take ancient Egypt, for example. When Howard Carter discovered Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, it unleashed a media frenzy, not just about the incredible treasures, but about the supposed curse of the pharaohs. Lord Carnarvon, the expedition's financial backer, died suddenly, shortly after the tomb was opened. Then a string of other deaths and misfortunes connected to the team were breathlessly reported as proof of the Boy King's posthumous wrath. And yet, no explicit, overarching curse was actually found inside Tutankhamun's tomb. What was found on a clay brick was a protective spell. These were common in Egyptian burials, designed to deter grave robbers and protect the sacred space by appealing to divine justice, not to unleash some mystical evil on future archaeologists. Protective inscriptions in other tombs were pretty explicit, warning of divine punishment for anyone who'd violate their sanctity. It all shows a widespread belief in supernatural protection, a real desire to safeguard the deceased journey into the afterlife. Science, in Tutankhamun's case, has largely debunked the idea of a magical curse. There's no evidence of ancient toxins or insidious molds designed to target those who disturb the pharaoh's rest. The curse, it seems, was mostly a myth, amplified by sensationalist media and a public already fascinated by ancient Egyptian mystique. It lives on, really, as superstition and a colorful part of King Tut's story in popular culture. But this doesn't mean curses were powerless. Their real punch might not have come from supernatural mechanics, but from the profound psychological impact they had. Imagine living in an era where the gods were seen as active, often unpredictable, players in human lives. A formal curse, especially one declared by religious leaders or those in power, could carry immense weight. It could crush a population's morale, justify aggression against them, or even serve as an after-the-fact explanation for a disaster that was otherwise impossible to understand. If a city was declared cursed, it could become an outcast. Allies might abandon it. Enemies might feel divinely sanctioned to attack. Trade could dry up. Spirits could plummet. The belief in a curse could, in a way, become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then, when disaster did strike, a devastating earthquake, a relentless plague, a brutal conquest, blaming it on a curse offered a way to understand it. It provided a cause, however terrifying, for suffering that seemed inexplicable. It turned random chaos into a story of sin and punishment, reinforcing social rules and religious beliefs. The destruction wasn't meaningless. It was a consequence, a lesson. As we explore some specific cases, we'll see how these pronouncements of doom, whether people thought they were divinely inspired or just strategically used, played a huge role in the story of a city's end, shaping its legacy for thousands of years. The line between a magical hex and a socio-political weapon, or even a deep psychological scar, could be terrifyingly thin. Few cities in antiquity bring to mind such a gut-wrenching image of total annihilation as Carthage. For centuries, this Phoenician colony, which grew into a maritime superpower, was Rome's most formidable rival. It was a jewel on the North African coast, commanding vast trade networks and a powerful navy. Its harbors teemed with ships, its markets bustled with merchants from all over the known world. Its armies, famously led by Hannibal, had dared to bring Rome itself to the very brink of collapse. But Carthage's glory wasn't to last. Its memory was systematically and brutally erased, culminating in a destruction so total that it fueled legends of a curse meant to ensure it would remain desolate forever. The lifeblood of Carthaginian power was its strategic location and its skill in trade. It's founded, as tradition tells us, by the Phoenician queen Dido in the 9th century BCE. It grew from a simple trading post into an empire. Its people were famous sailors, explorers, and traders, but in the eyes of their Roman enemies, they were also cruel and treacherous. This rivalry festered and then exploded into 3 devastating wars, known as the Punic Wars. Spanning over a century, from 264 to 146 BCE, these weren't just minor border disputes. They were titanic struggles for control of the Mediterranean world, fought with breathtaking savagery on both land and sea. It's in the aftermath of the Third Punic War that the legend of Carthage's curse really takes hold. After a grueling 3-year siege, the Roman general Scipio, Miliano's grandson by adoption of the famous Scipio Africanus, who had defeated Hannibal, finally breached Carthage's formidable defenses in 146 BCE. What followed wasn't just a conquest. It was a calculated obliteration. Historical accounts describe a week of street-by-street fighting, of horrific slaughter, of buildings systematically torn down. The remaining 50,000 Carthaginians, just a fraction of the city's population before the siege, were sold into slavery. The city, which had stood for nearly 7 centuries, was razed to the ground. The legend, made popular by later writers, adds a chilling ritual to this destruction, that Scipio, after ordering the city to be burned and demolished, had its soil plowed over and sown with salt. He then supposedly uttered a formal curse to ensure that nothing would ever grow there again. That Carthage would remain a barren wasteland, a monument to Roman vengeance. This image of a salted earth, a city literally poisoned against future life, has become the ultimate symbol of a cursed and blighted land. But did this dramatic cursing ceremony, salt and all, actually happen? Modern historians and archaeologists seriously question the literal truth of the salt-sowing ritual. While the Romans were certainly capable of uttering curses of vocatio, the ritual of calling an enemy's gods to abandon their city is a known practice detailed contemporary accounts of Carthage's fall, like those by Polybius, who was actually there, don't mention any salting. The story seems to be a later addition, perhaps popping up in historical narratives centuries after the event, to really hammer home the totality of Rome's victory and how treacherous the Carthaginians were perceived to be. The real curse of Carthage might not have been supernatural at all, but political and ideological. Roman hatred for Carthage ran deep. Cato the Elder, a Roman statesman, famously ended all his speeches, no matter the topic, with the chilling phrase, "Carthago delenda est." Carthage must be destroyed. This relentless animosity, born of fear and generations of conflict, was the true engine of the city's doom. The physical destruction was indeed catastrophic. Archaeologists have found evidence of the massive fires that consumed the city, layers of ash and rubble that scream of the violence of its end. The climax of Carthage's ancient story was this fiery, brutal end in 146 BCE. The city was declared sacred, or accursed, essentially devoted to the gods of the underworld, a place where rebuilding was forbidden. But the site was too valuable, both strategically and for farming, to be ignored forever. Just over a century later, Julius Caesar started making plans to refound Carthage as a Roman colony, and it was Augustus who saw it through. Roman Carthage actually rose to become one of the most important cities in the Roman Empire, a major center for agriculture, trade, and later Christianity. And yet the shadow of its Punic past and the legend of its cursing lingered. The obliteration of Punic Carthage was so complete that it became a cautionary tale. While the Roman city thrived for centuries, the memory of its predecessor's violent end, amplified by that dramatic tale of salt and curses, served as a powerful reminder of Rome's might and ruthlessness. The curse, in this sense, was the enduring story of utter defeat and condemnation, a historical scar that even centuries of Roman prosperity couldn't fully erase. The true dark side here was human capacity for calculated, systematic destruction, fueled by unending hatred, a force far more tangible and arguably more terrifying than any supernatural curse. Deep beneath the coastal plains of Greece's Peloponnese Peninsula lies the ghost of a city that vanished in a single, horrifying night. This was Helike. Once a flourishing and important city-state of ancient Achaea, a leading member of the First Achaean League, and a revered center for worshipping Poseidon, the Earthshaker, the god of the sea. Its fate, a sudden and complete obliteration in the winter of 373 BCE, wasn't a slow decline or a forgotten abandonment. It was a cataclysm so profound that it echoed through antiquity as a stark warning of divine wrath. A city swallowed whole, supposedly by the very god it honored.
Helike was a big deal.
It had a renowned sanctuary dedicated to Poseidon Heliconios, which attracted pilgrims and brought prestige. Its coins, its role in founding colonies, and its leadership in the Achaean League all point to a vibrant and influential city. Ancient writers, including Pausanias, Strabo, and Diodorus Siculus, tell its story and its dreadful end. They speak of a city that in its prosperity perhaps grew arrogant, committing acts of sacrilege or hubris that lit the fuse of Poseidon's fury. The specific scenes that supposedly brought on this divine retribution vary in the old accounts. Some say Helike refused to give a statue of Poseidon, or maybe a model of its altar, to Ionian colonists. Others claim its citizens even killed Ionian supplicants who had sought refuge in Poseidon's sanctuary, a terrible violation of sacred law. Whatever the alleged cause, the legendary consequence was clear. Poseidon, enraged, struck the city with his terrible power. The accounts describe a sequence of terrifying events. Ominous signs were said to have appeared before the disaster, huge pillars of fire or comets. Then, on that fateful winter night, a catastrophic earthquake hit. But this was no ordinary tremor. The very ground beneath Helike gave way, and the city, with all its inhabitants, plunged below the earth. At the same time, or immediately after, a massive tsunami surged inland from the Corinthian Gulf, flooding the sunken city and the surrounding land, wiping Helike off the map as if it had never been. Rescue parties arriving the next day found nothing but a new inland lagoon. It's said the tops of the submerged trees from Poseidon's sacred grove were visible beneath the waters, a haunting testament to the city's watery grave. For centuries, travelers reported being able to see the submerged ruins of Helike when the waters were calm, its drowned statues still standing in the murky depths. For over 2,000 years, Helike remained a lost city. Its precise location was a mystery debated by scholars. Its story, a chilling blend of historical catastrophe and cautionary myth. The search for Helike became a kind of archaeological holy grail in Greece. Then, in the late 20th century, things started to change. Archaeologist Dora Katsanopoulos, convinced the ancient accounts held literal truth, but that the lagoon was likely an inland one formed by soil liquefaction, began systematic searches. In 2001, after years of painstaking work, her team announced they'd rediscovered ancient Helike, buried under several meters of river sediment and silt, not in the Gulf of Corinth itself, but a few kilometers inland. The archaeological findings have been extraordinary. They back up much of the ancient story, but through a scientific lens. Excavations have revealed destruction layers dating precisely to 373 BCE, showing collapsed buildings, pottery, and even human remains, all buried beneath a thick layer of clay and silt. Classic signs of liquefaction, where earthquake vibrations cause water-saturated soil to lose its strength and basically turn into liquid. Evidence strongly points to a massive earthquake on a local fault line, causing the ground to sink, followed by a devastating tsunami that swept over the site. The remains of marine life found in these destruction layers confirmed the flooding. The climax of Helike's existence was this terrifying combination of earthquake and tsunami. One moment, a bustling city. The next, a submerged tomb. Scientific explanation. A powerful earthquake triggering soil liquefaction and a tsunami is clear. Yet, it's easy to see how, in an age when natural disasters were seen as acts of the gods, such an event would be viewed as anything but random. Poseidon was the earthshaker and the ruler of the seas. What other explanation could there be for a city dedicated to him to be so utterly destroyed by his very elements, if not his direct, terrible anger? The legend of Poseidon's wrath became a powerful way for the ancient Greeks to make sense of an unimaginable catastrophe. It provided a moral. The city sinned, the god punished. This story transformed a terrifying natural disaster into a tale with meaning, a warning against arrogance and disrespect for the gods that would echo for generations. Helike's fate served as a potent reminder of the awesome and often terrifying power of the divine in the ancient world. The drowned city became a legend, even influencing Plato's story of Atlantis, according to some scholars. The truth of Helike, a catastrophic natural disaster, is no less terrifying than the myth. But the myth itself shows us that ancient human need to find reason and meaning even when faced with overwhelming, destructive forces. The dark side here is the raw, untamable power of nature, and our human response of weaving stories of divine anger to cope with such absolute devastation. Beyond the dramatic sudden destructions of cities like Carthage, condemned by relentless human hatred, or Helike, swallowed by the earth and sea, there's a broader, perhaps sneakier way the cursed city idea shows up. We're talking about societal collapse, the slow fade into oblivion. The abandonment of one's mighty urban centers for reasons that, to their inhabitants or later observers, just didn't seem to have a purely rational explanation. In these cases, the curse might not be a formal pronouncement or a single god's angry outburst, but a creeping sense of doom, a belief that the land itself had turned barren, the gods had looked away, or that unseen. Malevolent forces were at play, making a place unlivable or ensuring its decay. Throughout history, countless civilizations have faced profound crises, leading to cities being abandoned or entire societies crumbling. Plagues, widespread destruction, and societal collapses were often chalked up to supernatural wrath or curses. This wasn't always about a specific witch's hex or a pharaoh's inscribed warning. It was more about a worldview where the sacred and the everyday, the natural and the supernatural, were deeply tangled. Misfortune on a grand scale was rarely seen as just bad luck. It was often seen as a meaningful response to human actions, especially if people broke religious or moral codes. Think about the mysterious decline of the Indus Valley civilization around 1900 BCE. Great cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, with their sophisticated urban planning, advanced sanitation, and a script we still can't read, were gradually abandoned. While modern theories point to a mix of factors, climate change, rivers changing course, maybe internal conflict, or trade networks breaking down, the sheer scale of the decline and the quiet emptying of these once bustling cities must have been baffling to those who saw it happen. We don't have written records from the Indus people themselves describing curses, but it's easy to imagine later cultures stumbling upon these vast, silent ruins and weaving tales of divine displeasure, or ancient dooms to explain their desolation. The sheer emptiness of a once great city can feel inherently ominous, can't it? Similarly, The collapse of the classic Maya civilization between the 8th and 9th century CE saw iconic cities like Tikal, Palenque, and abandoned. Grand construction stopped, populations shrank, and the jungle slowly reclaimed what had been vibrant centers of power, learning, and religion. Again, researchers now suggest a complex mix of things: long droughts, overpopulation, constant warfare, environmental damage, and the breakdown of political and religious authority. For the Maya themselves, whose beliefs were rich with deities influencing every part of life, from rainfall to harvests to war, such a long period of suffering and decline would almost certainly have been seen through a supernatural lens. While specific curse texts for each abandoned city might not be easy to find in the archaeological record, the failure of rulers to keep things prosperous and appease the gods would have been seen as a sign of lost favor, a kind of systemic curse on the ruling families or the cities they governed. The curse here is the feeling that divine support has been withdrawn, leading to the unraveling of cosmic and social order. Plagues, too, were powerful triggers for interpretations of divine wrath. The plague of Athens in the 5th century BCE, during the Peloponnesian War, wiped out a huge part of the city's population and severely weakened its war effort. Thucydides, who wrote about the plague, described the utter despair and lawlessness that followed, as people felt abandoned by gods and humans alike. In situations like that, where a terrifying invisible enemy is reaping a deadly harvest, it's a short leap to believing the community is suffering under a divine curse for some collective sin, known or unknown. Similar views popped up during epidemics in ancient Egypt or the Roman Empire, where outbreaks were often seen as divine punishment. Even acts of war, if they were unusually brutal or involved desecrating sacred sites, could lead to the belief that a conquered city was cursed. The destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonians in 586 BCE and later by the Romans in 70 CE involved the trashing and destruction of its holy temple. For the Jewish people, these weren't just military defeats. They were catastrophic events loaded with religious meaning, interpreted by prophets as divine punishment for sins and breaking their covenant, a kind of divinely ordained curse leading to exile and suffering. What all these different instances show us is something very human: our need to find meaning in chaos and explanations for overwhelming misfortune. In a world without our modern scientific understanding of geology, disease, or complex socioeconomic forces, the supernatural realm offered a readily available and culturally accepted way to explain things. The city didn't just fall because of poor farming practices or shifting trade routes. It fell because it was cursed, because its people had angered the gods, or because a powerful enemy had called down dark forces against it. These curses served many purposes. They offered an explanation, however frightening. They reinforced religious and moral codes by showing the dire consequences of breaking them. They could also be political tools, justifying conquest or discrediting a fallen enemy. The cultural impact of these interpretations is huge. They shaped historical narratives and fueled folklore and legends for centuries. While our modern understanding often debunks specific supernatural claims, recognizing these events as complex historical phenomena, the power of these beliefs in their time was undeniable. The dark side we're exploring here isn't just the physical destruction, but the psychological weight of believing your world is crumbling due to forces beyond your control, yet intimately tied to your moral and spiritual failings. The whispers of ruin, amplified by generations of storytelling, ensured that these cities were remembered not just for their fall, but for the terrifying, often supernatural, reasons believed to lie behind it. Our journey through these shadowed ruins and chilling legends is far from over. The ancient world is absolutely packed with mysteries that still challenge our understanding today. If you find these explorations into the darker corridors of history as fascinating as we do, if you're driven by that same urge to uncover forgotten truths and question the stories passed down through millennia, then make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. That way you won't miss our next investigation into the enigmatic and the unexplained. And now, we really want to hear from you. Which cursed city, doomed civilization, or ancient mystery sends a shiver down your spine? Which legend haunts your curiosity the most? Share your thoughts and suggestions in the comments below. Your insights could very well guide where we venture next. We began our journey looking for the dark side of ancient civilizations, peering into the legends of cursed cities and catastrophic destructions. We've walked the spectral streets of Carthage, a city condemned by Roman hatred and supposedly sown with salt. We've plumbed the depths that claimed Helike, a metropolis swallowed by an angry god. Its fate a chilling lesson in the power of nature and the stories we spin to understand it. And we've listened to those broader whispers of ruin, where societal collapse, plagues, and widespread desolation were often seen through the terrifying lens of divine punishment and malevolent curses. What emerges from these ashes and echoes is a complex picture of history, belief, and our enduring human struggle to make sense of profound loss and overwhelming disaster. The idea of the cursed city is more than just a collection of spooky tales. It's a window into the ancient mind, revealing a world where the line between the material and the magical was blurry, where gods were thought to intervene directly in human affairs, and where misfortune was rarely seen as just random. The allure of these stories is still incredibly strong. Why, centuries and even millennia later, are we still so captivated by the idea of a doomed acropolis, a damned empire? Maybe it's the sheer drama, the ultimate cautionary tale of pride coming before a fall. Perhaps it's a morbid curiosity about the dark side, a fascination with the terrifying and the forbidden. Or maybe these legends touch upon something deeper, primal, that civilizations, for all their apparent strength and sophistication, can be terrifyingly fragile. That forces beyond our immediate understanding, whether it's the blind rage of nature, the relentless ambition of enemies, or the slow, insidious decay from within, can bring even the mightiest to ruin. The so-called curse of the pharaohs around Tutankhamun's tomb, for all its media hype, actually highlights a core truth. Humans have long sought to protect what they hold sacred, and to find meaning when misfortune strikes those who cross those boundaries. While scientific inquiry has often debunked the supernatural claims, showing that many victims of such curses died from understandable, natural causes, the legend itself persists as a powerful cultural artifact. So, were these cities truly cursed? By curse we mean a direct supernatural intervention, a magical force that actively brought about destruction. Then the evidence, when we look at it through a modern, scientific lens, is often lacking. It usually points to more tangible culprits: geological upheaval, military conquest, disease, environmental damage, or societal breakdown. But if we understand curse in a broader sense, as the crippling weight of belief, as a label that could isolate and demoralize, as a story that helped ancient peoples cope with the inexplicable, or as the enduring historical memory of a particularly brutal or tragic end, then yes, these cities were indeed touched by a profound darkness. The curse becomes a metaphor for the devastating impact of catastrophe, the psychological scars left on collective memory, and our human tendency to attribute extraordinary events to extraordinary, often supernatural, causes. The dark side of ancient civilizations isn't just about the specter of vengeful gods or magical incantations. It's also about the very real horrors of war, plague, and natural disaster, and the chilling ways societies tried to make sense of their deepest fears and their most profound losses. These stories of cursed cities aren't just relics of a superstitious past. They are enduring testaments to the power of narrative, the mysteries of human belief, and the terrifying, awe-inspiring forces that have shaped our world, leaving behind only ruins and the haunting legends of their fall. The true terror, perhaps, lies not always in the supernatural, but in our very real capacities for destruction and the desperate, often dark ways we try to understand it.